You're watching Cable 2.
Welcome to Today with Dr. Beverly Emory. I'm Chris Runge. Thanks so much for being with us. We've got a lot to talk about today, including the latest school board meeting and what was talked about there, and awards. Boy, do we have awards to talk about, and that's always good news. So we hope you'll stick around for that. First of all, Dr. Emory, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
We are almost through October.
Scary.
It is. It's very scary. Nearing the end of the year and the holidays, so maybe a little bit of a breather coming up, but
I'm not sure about that.
Until then, lots to talk about because you've been busy. The school board's been busy. The most recent meeting, we're talking about the student achievement gap. That was a big topic of conversation and what we're doing to close that gap, identify it and close it. What are we doing?
What was really interesting this week at the board meeting was we've looked at the data. We've looked at the district data prior, and we've had that data for several months. But we brought in schools that have actually made progress in closing the gap and had them share with the board and the community specific strategies for how they're doing that. And as we might guess, there's not one specific thing we can do district-wide that really is magical. If there were, we'd be doing it. But very uniquely listening to how schools have worked with the data, identified specific students, built relationships. I think that was something we heard very loudly, that you can try an awful lot of strategies, but if you don't have rapport with the kids and the kids don't know you care about them, then you're going to miss those opportunities. So it was nice to hear from Sedge Garden, Flat Rock, and Glenn, who have all done a really nice job in closing the gap. I think one of the other things as a district we've done that I'm really proud of, and Andy Kraft introduced this topic. He's taken such ownership of it, even though he's the accountability person, but creating for every school a roster of students who might fall through the cracks, and being sure schools clearly know those kids have been identified. And then when you couple that with the program we have called Tracks 360, which looks weekly at students' discipline, grades, and their attendance. And on Mondays, every school in this district gets a list of students who could be at risk. And so I think as a district, we're trying to do a better job of giving schools that specific individual data so that they don't have to spend time digging for it. They can spend their time working on what do we need to do to help and support these students.
You know, you bring up a really good point. Every school really is unique. It's not as easy as saying every third grader in the school system needs to read for 30 minutes. I mean, every school has its own unique gap.
Absolutely. And that's why as a district, our requirement, so people say, well, what are you doing as a district? Well, as a district, our requirement is that every school has a goal to address their gap. And then we monitor for that. So the goal at Sedge Garden is different from the goal at Flat Rock. And so our job is not to prescribe for schools, but to make sure they're using their own data and have a plan for what they're going to do.
Something else you talked about on Tuesday night was results from a wellness survey. First of all, what is a wellness survey and what are the results?
We have a policy, a wellness policy, which is mandated for districts in North Carolina. And as a part of that, we check on it. And one of the ways that we check on it is through an annual survey. And I think the survey is done every 2 years. And it is just a series of questions related to student health and well-being, around physical activity, mobility, nutrition. Things I found very interesting, how changes in how we're using food as an incentive for students, and in particular with the focus on childhood obesity, how can we find other ways to help incentivize activities or programs without the pizza party or the ice cream party or whatever that might be. Our results were very consistent. We had in this year's survey a couple of questions that were new, And I think that the partnership between our physical education department and our child nutrition department really speaks to a sincere desire to use the data to get out and try to exact a change in some of those places. The other thing that always amazes me is there's still some vestiges of using recess or other physical activity as a consequence for students, and we really discourage that. It's much like writing. You know, we're not going to develop a love of certain things in kids if they see them as, oh, I have to run laps if I don't hand my homework in, or I don't get to go out. I have to stay in at recess. And we've really tried to help people see that's not a good strategy, because if I don't get out and get some of that energy out and breathe some fresh air, I'm not going to be your best student after recess either. So very interesting and a nice way for us to sort of track progress over time.
That is nice. And it's something else nice that we've had to celebrate over the past month is the Order of the Longleaf Pine Award. People are probably familiar with that. It's the highest honor that the governor of the state can give.
Before Tuesday night's meeting, the longest-serving member of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education was in for a big surprise. What Vic Johnson didn't know was that family, friends, and colleagues were all gathered in his honor. He was about to be presented the highest award in the state of North Carolina.
It's always nice to have an opportunity to get together in fellowship, especially on a school board meeting night.
Former school board chair and state representative Donnie Lambeth came in from Raleigh to officially present Vic Johnson with the prestigious Order of the Longleaf Pine Award.
Great state, and I can't think of a more fitting person than Mr. Johnson. In fact, it's hard for me to talk about him without being emotional. The thing that comes to mind most about Mr. Johnson is we all kind of loosely throw around walk the talk. You know, this is a man who walks the talk, and he doesn't talk that much because he's doing a lot of walking. You know, he's in the community. A lot of the things we heard lifted up in this recognition about his, you know, some almost 20 years hosting a golf tournament. To me, that's just such a neat thing. I mean, think about his whole focus that a lot of kids in parts of our community never get a chance to play golf, see golf, be on a golf course, know golf etiquette, and it's also a strategy to diversify the sport. You know, that these kids are really learning self-discipline. You know, they're being coached. They're doing meaningful activity in the summer, and you know, whatever it takes, he makes it happen. And it's those kids get recognized at the end, T-shirts and trophies, but you know, we see kids who come back and talk about that experience years later in terms of how it changed their trajectory in school as well as beyond. I also think the wealth of knowledge, Mr. Johnson is so well balanced on all things school, having been a parent, a student, and an administrator. So he brings a sense of reason, but he is also a very strong advocate, and I just really admire him. In my first few years here, I was out trying to meet parents at Boys and Girls Clubs and the recreation centers, and I quickly found that having Mr. Johnson invite them got me a crowd, and especially if they knew he was going to show up. They were really coming for Mr. Johnson, and we'll meet this lady who came with him. But that and just incredible legacy that he has in this community is powerful. And as I said, he doesn't speak that often, but when he does, he brings such institutional memory and history and faith in us. I mean, he's very much a supporter of the staff and the work that we have to do. I also love, just closing about Vic, you know, he gets out in the schools, he talks to kids, he takes his money envelope with him, and really kids, you know, that's another example of walk the talk. So we're not just saying read to me, he's quizzing them and sort of has his own little incentive program for how to encourage kids to study and do well academically. And I just admire so much that he doesn't do any of it for recognition. And so that's why the recognition was all the more sweet, and we wanted it to be a surprise and really very special.
And his whole family was able to make it?
Yes.
He's the real deal. He really is.
Oh my goodness. It was a very fun event, and it was great hearing the stories from folks throughout his history here in the district.
Donnie Lambeth, Dr. Martin,
State school board member Buddy Collins, who was a student of Mr. Johnson as well as a board colleague. So that kind of gives you an idea of the legacy that Mr. Johnson has.
The years of service. Excellent. Something else we celebrated recently, we crowned our Principal of the Year. Leslie Alexander of Reynolds High School was the winner, and lots of folks gathered at Dash Stadium recently for the announcement.
So it's now my honor to name our 2017-2018 Principal of the Year from RJ Reynolds High School, Leslie Alexander.
I would like to thank my wonderful staff. My staff is so amazing. I mean, we have the best teachers, the best administrators. I'm so blessed to work with. I will tell you, when I got the call from Dr. Martin that I got the job at Kennedy, I was so excited. I mean, I was an assistant principal. I'd never been a principal. I thought this was going to be easy. I had a great idea.
There were 4 finalists for the Principal of the Year award. All of them were deserving. Ms. Alexander, certainly deserving. Great award. Your thoughts? It was a great morning.
It was really a nice event, and I know we keep working every year in our continuous improvement mindset, but I thought this was very special. I loved that each of the finalists came and shared with us because they were so powerful in their comments and yet so supportive of each other. I mean, that feeling in the room that it was okay, whoever it was, because we were behind them was very, very apparent. Leslie, I mean, what I wish I could clone Leslie. She's just such a go-getter, and I think an example of what we talk about in this district, that the work is so incredibly tough. If you are not on fire, it's really hard to do, and she just, that passion just kind of oozes out of her, and I think it's how she goes as hard as she goes, and I think why in her past 2 settings she has been able to exact outcomes that are remarkable in both. In a small 6 through 12 high school setting at Kennedy, and then in 2 short years at Reynolds, some really remarkable accomplishments that the data supports, and then you also can walk in the building and feel that the culture of the school supports the leadership team too. And I think she's also very gracious about acknowledging that none of this happens because one person, that the staff have just been enormously responsive, but we all know that you got to have the principal, right? You got to have the champion out there. And so I think Leslie's just an awesome representative for us this year.
She is, and it's a great school. It's quite a responsibility. I mean, every principal, of course, it's a big responsibility, but you're really a torch carrier there. I mean, that's quite a history.
I also think that it's really a commentary on some of the outstanding achievement we've seen in our high schools, that we've had 2 years back to back that the Principal of the Year has been a high school principal. And I think that's also some recognition for the sort of enormous responsibility that is. And until you've lived it, it's hard to understand, but it never stops. Right. It doesn't stop in the evenings. It doesn't stop on weekends. I mean, it's an enormous job.
Yes, it is. And we should also probably point out and thank the folks at the Dash Stadium, because that was a wonderful gathering spot, breakfast. I mean, it was very nice.
They have made, our back to school rally, this event. If it were not for their support of us and partnership, we would not be able to do things at this scale. And so for everyone in the room to feel special at breakfast and to feel that you're in a sort of fun place, I think, so those folks who provide that for us sometimes may not realize what a gift it is.
Well, this is an easy segue because also at Dash Stadium earlier this month, thousands of people gathered from all 81 schools and different departments in the school system for a walk against bullying. It's our anti-bullying walk. We do this every October. It's a real visible reminder that we continue to fight bullying on all levels in our district. It's nice to see everybody. It was nice to see all the signs and all the messages. Any final thoughts as we close this out?
It's a lovely event, and I think that this week, in fact, yesterday was Community Day, and folks were all orange. I don't think we can do too much here to encourage students to talk to people, to find someone in a building. What we find with bullying is that most students are silent about it until they get home or until something happens that they go home and tell their parents. And we're glad they tell their parents, and parents can reach out to us, but we also want an environment with core values around, students remember how we make them feel, and they're the heart of what we do, that students would be okay telling someone at school. The sooner we know about these things, the better we can address them. And so while the rally is a phenomenal event and brings great awareness, I think the work that we're doing every day is equally important to how we make kids feel and how we create opportunities for them to feel if something's going on, that they're heard and that we're doing something about it.
Yeah, it was a wonderful event. And keep it in mind for next year. It's always first week of October. Thank you for
That's
being
right.
with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We appreciate it. And when we come back, as we promised, more on Victor Johnson, the latest recipient of the Order of the Longleaf Pine Award. Stay with us.
Baby, tell me, where'd you ever learn to fight without saying no word? Then waltz back into my life like it's all gonna be alright. Don't you know how much it hurts when we don't talk, when we don't touch, when it doesn't feel like we're even in love? It matters to me when I don't know what to say, don't know what to do, don't know if it really even matters to you. How can I make you see it matters to me? When I don't know what to say, don't know what to do, don't know if it really even matters to you. How can I make you see it matters to me?
Jessica, we need to leave right now.
I need to get something. Dance recitals are so boring.
There's a meaning no one knows. Wait until we set
So
free.
what's the empty suitcase for?
The grand prize trophy.
Duh.
Confidence. Pass it on.
I was born to be somebody. Yeah, you can be the greatest, you can be the best, you can be the king come banging on your chest. You can beat the world, you can beat the war, you could touch a God, go banging on his door. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock, you can move a mountain, you can break rocks, you can be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you can find yourself. Stand in the Hall of Fame. And the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be a champion. Be a champion on the walls of the Hall of Fame.
every sitting North Carolina governor is allowed to give the prestigious Order of the Longleaf Pine Award to recipients that they feel have gone above and beyond and done some great work for our state. Well, we're very proud of the latest recipient. That's our longest serving school board member, Victor Johnson. And as we told you earlier, we recently surprised him with the award.
Before Tuesday night's meeting, the longest serving member of the Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Board of Education was in for a big surprise. What Vic Johnson didn't know was that family, friends, and colleagues were all gathered in his honor. He was about to be presented the highest award in the state of North Carolina.
It's always nice to have an opportunity to get together and fellowship, especially on a school board meeting night.
Former school board chair and state representative Donnie Lambeth came in from Raleigh to officially present Vic Johnson with the prestigious Order of the Longleaf Pine Award.
State of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, Governor. Victor Johnson, Jr., I do by these presents confer the Order of the Longleaf Pine.
Each North Carolina governor reserves this award for the state's finest citizens. Johnson's long career in education and distinguished work as a mentor made him a perfect choice. Former colleagues told heartwarming stories about their respect for Johnson and his ability to lead.
We've got this notion that, who are special people that we know and we've worked with and we want to recognize in a unique way. And Vic Johnson came to mind.
Elected in 1997, Johnson has served on the Board of Education for 3 decades and says he's always been fortunate to be around good people.
The many people that have been very helpful to me, my wife, and a lot of people in this community have been very good to me. They've always steered me in the right direction, and they always encouraged me to put out, to do the best that I can do. That's my motto as I grew up. They always felt that I could do better than what I was doing.
Winston-Salem's very own Victor Johnson, now the state's latest recipient of the Order of the Longleaf Pine Award.
He's quite a man. Congratulations to Victor Johnson. All of us at Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Schools are quite proud of you. And that's going to do it for this edition of Today. Thanks so much for being with us. We hope that you'll be with us next time as we'll be approaching the holidays. Halloween is right around the corner, so keep that in mind. And remember, those trick-or-treaters are going to be out and about. We'll see you again in November. Thanks so much for being with us. As we leave you today, more from the Bully Walk, or the anti-Bully Walk in Winston-Salem. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.